it's skybound with the Talking Joe guys. Everyone calm down, we're here to talk comics. Skybound at Skybound.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. Now, today we are live and direct, coming to you from the Energon Universe, talking about the Free Comic Book Day special, Energon Universe Special 2025, which came out as part of the Free Comic Book Day Saturday. That's yesterday at time of recording, May 3rd, 2025, and it will be re-released as the Energon Universe Special 2025, which you will have the privilege of paying for on May 14th, 2025. That's a lot of 2025 mentions, but I will not be talking about this issue alone. As usual, I will be joined by my co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hi, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers. We have a guest. Let's bring him in right now.
It's Chris McLeod.
Hi.
Welcome to Talking Joe.
Mark, for new listeners, what does Chris have to do with Talking Joe?
As little as possible. So Chris did a good stretch as being he did a duration of time.
I did a stretch. Yeah, let's be clear about this. There's nothing good about
really
it.
Stretched the audience's patience.
100%.
As co-host once as the first replacement co-presenter after Chief had broken his original lineup.
I'm telling you, this show is like Thingy's brush from Only Fools and Horses. Trigger's brush. It's had so many different. It's like the same brush, yeah, but 25 different heads and 15 different handles. That's what it feels like.
So Chris was a co-host of Talking Joe, and then he left. And Chris, you started your own internet G.I. Joe endeavor. What is that?
Not quite how the history went, but
let's rebrand you as a Talking Joe spin-off.
I started with Talking Joe. That's where I got my big break, and now I'm doing the full force.
After you'd been fired, yeah.
Yeah. I got laid off by Big Talking Joe, and then had to fend for myself in the mean streets, and that's where the full force was born. Even though it had been happening about 5 years prior to that, but that's fine.
Okay, and then just to put a fine point on it for our American listeners, the full force is something that who says when? Why would someone say that?
So, yeah, the full force was the battle cry for the VHS overdubs in the UK for the Sunbow G.I. Joe cartoon, which was Action Force, of course, where you got the Action Force rebrand in like 87, International Heroes, and the VHS tapes kind of coincided with that. And rather than just give us G.I. Joe cartoons, we got overdubbed episodes with different livery on the box art and everything. So we had Action Force this and Action Force that, and Full Force was the battle cry instead of Yo Joe. And we just thought it was the perfect name for a show and went with it.
And just one more detail. When you say overdubs, it's just the words G.I. Joe and Yo Joe that were overdubbed. The rest of the dialogue was maintained from the American English language.
The majority of the dialogue was maintained, but there would be times when certain things were cut out or certain things were overdubbed to like not confuse kids when it came to like cultural references or some other little aspects. I can't think of one off the top of my head. There is one I used to go to.
Anytime that the Joes were talking about eggplants... then
right,
and they would have a bad,
which happened a lot. I can tell you though, they did keep the term bollocks in one of the episodes, which was phenomenal. By the way, I remember hearing that for the first time, and just being like, "Huh." And yeah, I guess it was a case of like the US didn't see it as a swear word and we did, but it was just so they missed that in the editing booth.
In Transformers Beast Wars, seasons 1 and 2 and 3, slag is just a word for darn or junk. And
Yeah.
I hear that in Britain, that is a bad word.
It was also like the same. It was like, detritus. Slag was a bit effectively like the leftovers from some sort of industrial process is usually what slag meant. And it was usually an industrial kind of level of kind of stuff that got obviously brought into the lexicon as just trash and junk or garbage, but obviously not for the UK. It would be rubbish, crap, that kind of stuff, right? And then it was applied a derogatory term to a, like a person of loose, should we say, like
sexual mores?
Yes, sexual morals and stuff, I guess. Yeah, which was it's a similar word out there that you use in the US for the same sort of scenario.
Listeners, we're going to spend
begins with an SL.
Listeners, we're going to spend the next 2 hours talking about the etymology of various Transformers words from late American TV show. Okay, we should talk about G.I. Joe and Energon stuff.
Shut it, you slag. Let's move on. So, we are
brilliant.
We are
absolutely
live.
Brilliant.
Can you tell? So hello to everyone who was watching live. Shout out to Shane. Yo, Talking Joe. Yo, Shane. Shout out to Jedi Ben. Hello there. Hey, Chris.
I know them.
And
hey, Jedi.
And hello to Infinite Entertainment. And we will definitely get onto this from Infinite Entertainment. Loved how the end of G.I. Joe issue 6 ran into this special. Yeah, so we will definitely be talking about that element very shortly because
we'll be talking Joe, right?
We're constantly talking Joe.
Okay.
So we are celebrating Energon Universe Free Comic Book Special. It's called a Free Comic Book Day Special because it came out on Free Comic Book Day. So just on screen are some of the offerings of what came out in the shops yesterday. And depending on the particular store that you were in, you could get your hands on some of these for free, maybe as a bundle. Maybe they would give away a certain number. Maybe they would let you have as many as you liked, or maybe you had to spend a certain amount of money to get a certain proportion. It all depends store policy, doesn't it?
No. You're not allowed to charge, and you're not allowed to make someone buy something to get any.
Okay, interesting.
And the other rule is can't be displayed or given out before Free Comic Book Day.
Can you restrict numbers on any of them? Like can you only have one of each, basically, right?
Yeah, that is up to each store. So when
right.
People are always surprised when we tell them how many they can take because it's more than some other stores. Mm-hmm. And maybe they've already been to a store that morning, or maybe they remember from last year, or maybe it just seems like a lot because it's called Free Comic Book Day, not Free Comic Books Day. Maybe they think they're going to get one, and many people are surprised when it's more than one.
And it's not just any free comic either. It's particular sampling of free comics. You can't just go in and start taking anything you like off of the shelves.
Someone did ask on Friday, so I can take anything tomorrow? And someone did ask, really without knowing, curiously, on Saturday, yesterday, during the event. And part of what I feel like my job is not just getting people in the store to get free comics and to buy stuff, but to teach them about Free Comic Book Day. And so someone will come in and all the employees are there because it's our big day of the year, and we'll say, welcome to Free Comic Book Day. And sometimes they know what they're doing, and sometimes they look very surprised. And we will quickly follow up with, do you know about Free Comic Book Day? Or is it your first Free Comic Book Day? And if they say, I don't know, or yes, it is my first, we'll sort of thumb over to the back of the store where the free books are set up. So we have a shelf and we put blue painter's tape on the trim so that it's like one more visual. It's like the books on the blue shelves are free, and I will point to the logo on the top of several of them, and I'll say, Each publisher prepares special comics just for the day. And then people understand. And sometimes I'll go a step further and I'll say, Record Store Day? And people say no. And I'm always surprised because there's a record store around the corner. And until recently, there were 2 record stores around the corner. And I'll say, okay, well, never mind. Sometimes I'll say, Free Cone Day at Ben & Jerry's? And sometimes people say yes. But neither of those is actually...
They're not accurate representations of what Free Comic Book Day is. You sort of have to mush the
2 together.
So a vinyl lollipop kind of cone sort of scenario, like licking one of the records. I get it. Yeah, this makes perfect sense.
So this photo, if you're looking at this was our setup. We put the all ages one on the left. They all have green logos, except for the Tamagotchi one, which had a yellow logo. I don't know what that means. We put the M for mature ones on the right. Those have a red logo. This was an added wrinkle, a good wrinkle a couple years ago that they did. There are 3 age ratings now for Free Comic Book Day offerings, and the logo colors get changed accordingly. If you're looking at this photo, you may note that we have a reprint of All-Star Superman #1 on the bottom. We had ordered.
I thought that was an original.
The stack of first printings.
When you were talking about, can we just take anything? I was going to make the joke, genuinely, before this picture came up. Can we have the first appearance of Superman in Action Comics? Can I have that for free? And yes, you can, but just not the original.
Okay, so because 2 weeks ago was Superman Day, a DC Comics holiday promotional event for comic book stores, we had ordered a new version of the Action Comics issue #1 facsimile edition. It's from 1938, and we were selling that. You can see that in this photo on the left on our big display of facsimiles, and then here on the bottom shelf for the free books.
You have to have a fax machine for that.
Sometimes I just call them replicas because, yes, I think people may not quite know what a facsimile is. And then
they're going to fax it in.
I'm gonna phone it in. And then we'd ordered some bundles of a reprint of All-Star Superman issue #1. We had those for free at the register the last week or 2. And then for Free Comic Book Day, we moved them and put them in with the free comic books because it just sort of made sense. And I don't want sort of free things in 2 places, during a Free Comic Book Store day. And also, issue 1 of All-Star Superman is a much better comic book than a lot of Free Comic Book Day comics. And I'd very much like people to take that and not a, okay sampler of some upcoming stuff. Or I am going to pick on one of these a little bit later, a new comic story that needed a little bit more of a professional polish.
And also, All-Star Superman, sort of being taken as the inspiration for the new Superman movie out this summer. So I saw the trailer for that when I watched the Thunderbolts.
So this was our display. I know that some stores, they'll have them on a table. They'll have them right next to the new books. I know of a store that my buddy went to last year where you have to go up to the register and ask. And they give you, I think it's 1, and they pick, and that's no fun. But, some stores, this is not a big deal, Free Comic Book Day, because maybe they focus on, merchandise and back issues, or some stores, Free Comic Book Day is a real headache because a lot of people come in, they want free stuff, they don't buy anything, they don't come in the rest of the year, they just sort of take up space, and maybe they're not even appreciative, and so it is a promotional tool, and if you have the bandwidth and the space, and you're the kind of store that likes Free Comic Book Day, I think you can make it a really big deal, and we do that at my store, and I love it, and I've always loved Free Comic Book Day all the years that I went to it before I had my own store. In the back of my mind, I wanted somehow to be more involved, and I would go to more than one store, and I would make mental notes, and I was always particularly excited when there was, one of my favorite comics got a Free Comic Book Day comic.
Very good.
Okay.
So that is context. Free Comic Book Day was yesterday. Now we're just going to have a bit of a mission debriefing back of our coverage of G.I. Joe issue 6, which makes a lot of sense as we slide into the Energon Universe Special DMs. So first up, post our discussion, there was a couple of covers released. So this is the G.I. Joe issue 6 cover by Davy, Davi, Go. which is a Skybound exclusive. It's a nice one. I like this one, and it doesn't have a logo as well. So Duke up the top of the image isn't being blocked out, but it's Cobra Commander in his sort of Napoleonic uniform, looking up over his sort of right shoulder as Duke is sort of jumping down kind of a rock kind of cavern at him / us. A nice little cover. And then we also had this Rose Besh cover, which is a Baroness variant.
Why are there so many covers of Baroness?
You get the idea. You get the idea. Okay, and this has been available on Whatnot, and I believe that Comics Lake are selling it on eBay, so that is where it can be found. Now, over to issue number 6, which was covered by Talking Joe not too very long ago. This is the Daniel Warren Johnson spoiler variant cover, spoilering the reveal of the end of issue 6, which included the grand reveal of Hound. Now, on the inside of the book, there was this element of Cobra Commander finding this matrix-looking thing, and there was some speculation that it might be tied back to the sort of dark matrix that we saw in Transformers issue 19, which had this sort of flashback to Megatron and going through these trials and being exposed to this dark version of the Matrix. So,
Mark, just to clarify, right now we're looking at composite images from 2 different comics.
That's right. Up the top is G.I. Joe issue 6, and down the bottom is a sort of image of Megatron being tortured with this dark Matrix from Transformers issue 19. We had Joshua Shibata 1840 in our YouTube comments, who pointed out that his speculation was the device that Cobra Commander took from the remains of the brainwave machine is actually a dark version of the Matrix of Leadership, and possibly the same one that Megatron had in this Transformers issue 19, that apparently gives the user the ability to control and manipulate the actions of others, similar to how a brainwave scan works. It is cool because the Cobra Commander took it from Megatron while holding him captive and dissecting him. So possibly some connections going on here. Difficult to read necessarily too much into it because we haven't seen absolutely everything, but there might be this connection to Cobra Commander discovering something as he was torturing Megatron back in the pages of Cobra Commander issue number 1. Now, I have to give Tim a bit of an award for listening patiently to my speculation as to what happened at the end of G.I. Joe issue 6, because he had, at that point, had an early preview of the Energon Universe Special and knew exactly what was going to happen to Clutch and Hound immediately afterwards. And so, yes, was patiently listening as I was honing in on this grenade of Clutches, wondering what it could mean, wondering what all of the, I guess, motivations might be, when, spoilers, in the next issue we find out exactly what that grenade was introduced for, because it directly plays a part in the pages of the Energon Universe Special. And there we get the reveal, and it is literally the last page of G.I. Joe issue 6 runs into the very first page of the Energon Universe Special.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question to both of you? What are your feelings on the visual transforming sound effect on those panels? How do you feel about this being a visual representation of etc., etc.?
Like it.
I like it. It's 2 colors. There's an offset, so there's a light blue to the left, and then there's the sort of lemon lime of the letters.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is that and the color, and of course the like geometric nature of the font, are adding to the idea that this is mechanical and electronic. You know, if you stare at a cathode ray TV screen, you're aware of like, all the little dots of color. And
Yeah.
if there's a sort of a visual echo where the sort of two layers of color of these letters are slightly offset, that might allude to sort of a reverb or an echo within the sound effect of itself. And I think I mentioned this in previous episode, Mark. This is a different sound effect, onomatopoeia, than what IDW was using, which was
TSCH or something, wasn't it? Right?
which was a different take on trying to spell the 1984 TV cartoon sound effects. And I like this because Skybound is doing things its own way, and they've picked something different for this. And for all,
but the rhythm's still there, though, isn't it? Key, ko, ko, ka, key. It's like still da, 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 da. It's still there.
Da, 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 da.
Key, ko, ko, ka, key.
We should ask Joshua Williamson if this, as a kid, if this is sort of how he spelled it in his head.
And they're also being consistent with it, because we had it here at the back page of G.I. Joe issue number 6, but in this slightly more, let's call it robotic text. Whereas we've got exactly the same sound effect in the Energon Universe Special when Hound transforms there, but it's in it. I think it's in Andrea Milana's own handwriting style, and it's a bit more of a scratchy style. But again, it's that same.
Yeah, so we now have 2 images in the world of Energon G.I. Joe that have been repeated many times and are gaining in importance. We have the image of Duke seeing Starscream, or maybe more specifically, Starscream destroying the jet that Duke was in and killing Duke's friend. We see that when it first happens in Transformers 2. We see that at the beginning of Duke number 1. Is it alluded to again at the end of G.I. Joe 6? I got to find the giant robot that killed my friend. And then we see it on page 4 of this Energon Universe comic book, Free Comic Book Day, where once again, Starscream brings his hands together and destroys the plane. Similarly, we now have this image that we've seen 4 times of Hound standing over Clutch. We saw it at the last page of G.I. Joe 6. We saw a variant cover of G.I. Joe 6. We see it the page 2 and 3 spread of the Free Comic Book Day Energon Universe comic book. How do you have Energon? Where did you get it? And maybe a version of it, and a very exaggerated version of it, as the cover and back cover of the Free Comic Book Day version of the Energon 25 special. And I don't know that this will carry the same amount of emotional resonance as Starscream revealing himself and attacking Duke and killing his friend. But I do feel like this is another moment where we can never go back. Up until now, it's only been Duke and Hawk who's not saying. It's only been Duke who's seen the giant metal alien man. And now Clutch has as well. And they're friends.
Friends. Robot friends. Right, okay. So next up, we started talking about the covers. So let's run into that and have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Let's start with the context. The when this was solicited, this was the image that we saw on screen. It was Clutch shooting a gun.
Lies.
And background classified, not because it's a classified design, but because the image was redacted. And
you can't have classified without lied.
Huh?
You can.
You
can't.
also can't have classified without class, Chris.
Yeah.
Or fied.
Or ass.
Or ed.
Or ass.
Or ed. Or ass.
Okay.
Yeah. That would just be Cliffide.
Did you guys have guesses when this cover was revealed?
Or
before this cover was revealed?
I just thought this was the cover. I genuinely didn't go any deeper than that. I thought, okay, they're just keeping it really chill, and I didn't think there was anything hidden behind it. Genuinely, I just did not think
You
that
thought
deeply about
you thought
it.
this was a graphical treatment for the final cover, and it's
Actual final cover.
And there's reasonable. That's reasonable because up until now, when they have redacted a cover, it's been black and it's been
Black.
A different font, and it said "spoiler" in white letters. So this does look like it could have been the cover. I suspected that there was going to be something Cobra related behind him, that he was in some kind of this was a really vague notion. He must be inside, there's a big Cobra base, and like not Nemesis Enforcer behind him, but it's something. But at the same time, just the title and the concept of this whole comic book might make a suggestion, because it's not the Energon Universe G.I. Joe special, it's the all three of them Energon Universe special. Mark, did you have a guess?
I thought probably something Transformers-y, just from the fact that this being the Energon Universe Special, I thought it was be kind of bringing some of the Energon Universe components together. But beyond that, no. Right. So the reveal of the cover as printed, which is now, freely available, looks like that.
Very exciting.
Exactly what I expected. Nailed it.
Hound is he's not in my top 5 favorite Transformers, but he's treated so well in More Than Meets the Eye, the first 3 episodes of the original 84 cartoon. And one of my favorite scenes in all of Transformers involves him. And so whenever I see him, I'm reminded how much I like him as a character. And so I'm excited that he's here.
Quick question. Do you guys think we'll see Hound revert to a form of a vamp at any point, considering these two are buddy-buddy? And we've seen it a million times in the past with Transformers. What's the game called? The phone mobile game? Earth Wars, is it? I think it was Earth Wars. They had a Hound vamp. There was a Hound vamp, obviously, in the SDCC crossover set. There was I think it was in the comics as well, early Transformers G.I. Joe comics.
I think it makes sense. Something just tells me no.
They want to keep the character.
Yeah, they want to keep the. I mean, they'll meet each other, they'll fight each other's wars, but
they'll kiss.
But they won't. They won't become the Thing in the other brand's thing. Should we look at some other covers, Mark?
Yeah. So we've got.
We should say this one is drawn by Andrea Milana, and. Is this also colored by Andrea Milana?
I believe so. I've not seen a separate color credit for this one, which normally means that it's all one artist. So I believe it would be Milana colors as well, though.
Okay.
I will also say I really like this cover, by the way. I think it's awesome.
But I will say I don't think the front cover is the strongest Free Comic Book Day cover, and that is why at my store I did a stack of the front cover and then a stack next to it.
I noticed that. That was a pretty good idea.
Cover, because you just see this guy and like sort of a robot arm. And Jesse, my manager, I think was the one who made this suggestion. He said, this is not a great cover on its own. And I don't think people are going to sort of want to grab it. Because we'd been talking about the which covers were good and which weren't good. That makes you want to grab it for Free Comic Book Day. And separate from the spoiler, the thing that's going to sell this is a giant robot, not some guy. And it's not a guy that non-G.I. Joe fans will recognize. It's just some guy. But I had to make a little...
It sort of is a little bit unrecognizable to Joe fans because, I mean, it's sort of Clutch, but it could be any generic guy, really. The way that he's sort of like not got the vintage kind of exact vibe going on. He hasn't really got the exact classified look going on, so it's it's an interesting one. He could be a generic dude.
If
really,
you added a little red, it could be Mutt with a beard.
Exactly.
True. It's funny because this was sort of covered up, with the classified, so to hide the spoilers. But lurking beneath that or behind that was a further bigger spoiler, which we'll get to in a bit as well. So it's like hiding a bigger spoiler with a smaller spoiler to some degree.
Stop saying spoiler because I keep thinking you're talking about Hound's butt.
Okay.
I actually wonder if that deeper spoiler was the thing that was there was a retailer Zoom call with Skybound a month or two ago, which all retailers were invited to, and I did not go to. And the idea is, if you know what's coming up, you might order more because you're going to be able to anticipate what your customers want. And I wanted to go, and it was at a time that I could make it, and I thought, I don't know that anything's a bigger surprise than the original Void Rivals surprise with Jetfire. If this was the spoiler that was discussed at that retailer call, this deeper thing in the Energon Universe comic, I'm glad it wasn't spoiled for me because I very much enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, other covers.
So there's. I was just going to say that of the covers, there has been images now out there of 4 of the 5 Energon Universe Special covers. We've not yet seen the cover D by E.J. Su.
I wonder why.
And he's been doing these like isometric blueprint type covers. So I imagine that there might be a person and a car, and that person and car is not Clutch and Hound.
Shiz.
Cool.
No shiz.
So cover B is Daniel Warren Johnson. It's sort of leaning into the Transformers vibe.
I see MF Doom. Can anyone else see MF Doom on the cover?
Yeah.
It's Mad Villain.
This
isn't
is in a record store, and the point of view is from behind the cash register and the counter, the sales counter, looking out to where the customers are. And there's a, let's say, dad and his son. And is that the Transformers the movie on vinyl?
Okay.
Record. I'm seeing a slight red and blue in the logo. I'm seeing a slight off-white in the background. I'm seeing not quite a triangle of characters in a rainbow of colors on the bottom third. But
yeah, you're right. You're right. Of course you're right, Tim. You're
where?
always right.
Why can't I see it?
The 86 album on vinyl.
Oh, yes.
The 86 movie album on vinyl. And what's striking about this cover is the lighting. But in terms of story, what's really happening here is there's a poster of Jazz, the Autobot, playing a saxophone, as if he has released an album or has some promotional event. Because the Transformer story inside this comic is about Jazz liking music.
Spoiler alert.
The lighting,
because Jazz has an actual spoiler. That's why I said that.
And also, you would never guess from his name or his 42 years of characterization that he likes Earth music. The lighting in this cover is particular because there are some overhead lights on the top left, and then there's some track lights on the right, and it definitely feels like a certain kind of store. Like this might be, in a basement, or the windows are blocked by shelves.
Yeah, this definitely looks like an underground record store, doesn't it? It's so cool. I would also say that they've never done a green redeco Jazz and called it Acid Jazz, have they? Because that should happen. Can we get that to happen, Hasbro, please? That is a deep cut Transformers joke.
G.I. Joe fans, Chris is leaning into his Transformers knowledge here.
Yeah, should I put my Transformers hoodie on instead?
Okay.
More covers.
Cover C will be.
I really like that cover, by the way. I think it's amazing.
So out so far, just to reiterate, is just the Free Comic Book Day book, and shortly to be released. May 14th will be the regular Energon Universe Special with the variant covers available to buy. On screen now is cover C, which is the 1 in 10 copy incentive by Conor Hughes, who does the Void Rivals strip inside the pages of this comic, and he will also be the new Void Rivals artist from issue 19, which is out 28th of May, while the regular
bloody love Void Rivals.
The regular artist is taking a sabbatical.
Such a happy app.
Yeah, it's lots. Void Rivals is lots of fun.
Yeah, it's been one really kind of like happy surprise for me. Like I wasn't expecting that much, and it's like a really solid, story, art, everything. I love it.
Yeah, it's every issue moves, and there are fun surprises with sort of what the characters want and what they know, and Lorenzo De Felici, series artist up until now, has a real verve to how he draws. More covers, Mark?
Yes, there is one more. This is the cover
Oh, that's
E, 1 in 50 copy incentive by Tom Reilly. And looking at this cover, for me, the sort of the thing that sort of really was my reaction was quite how sympathetic Tom Reilly and Andrea Milana's styles are. That I was almost like, hold on, did Andrea draw 2 covers here?
Yeah. I think whether this is on purpose or not, I don't know that Tom Reilly looked at Andrea Milana's stuff and said, I want to draw a little bit like that other artist for this one cover. But I do think Reilly's inking here, it's like he's using the same wedge tip pen that Milana uses. And so the thin to thick quality of the lines has a sort of, it's not the right word, but like edge or flare that is a little more angular.
Pronounced.
Yeah, more pronounced, a little more angular, a little less soft and refined than Reilly's.
100%.
And this cover, since it has a Quintesson, 2 Sharkticons, a Transformer, a giant keyboard, an Earth vehicle that could be an Autobot, and a G.I. Joe character, is the cover that represents the whole contents of this issue, without just being a Joe cover, a Transformers cover, or a Void Rivals cover.
Good point.
Heavily dynamic.
So this issue was brought to us by 3 creative teams. A G.I. Joe strip from Joshua Williamson with artist Andrea Milana, colorist Lee Lowridge. And just to call out, if you liked the art team on this issue, it will be the regular art team for the next arc. They will be drawing issue number 7 and on through the next arc. The Transformers strip was brought to us by regular Transformers writer Daniel Warren Johnson, also doing the art, along with colorist Mike Spicer. And then Void Rivals was brought to us by regular writer Robert Kirkman, with artist Conor Hughes, who will be the new Void Rivals artist, giving us a little bit of a preview of what we might expect. The colorist is Patricio Del Pej. Let's just go with that pronunciation. And then, of course, we have got editor Ben Abernathy, designer Andre Juarez, and production Ashby Florence.
Do you think Ben Abernathy is any relation to General Hawk?
Probably. It's nepotism.
Clayton M. Abernathy. Yeah, just they get these jobs, don't they? Just because of that. It's disgusting. Disgusting.
I wanted to ask you guys a broad question about this G.I. Joe lead story, which I just want to specify is 16 pages. So while it's not as long as a regular issue of G.I. Joe from Skybound, it is longer than many lead stories in Free Comic Book Day comics. And then the Transformer story is 6 pages, and then the Void Rivals story is 6 pages. So I wanted to ask you guys, in a broad sense, how do you feel about this as an intro to people who maybe haven't read any of this stuff for Free Comic Book Day, as a bridge between 2 arcs, as the next story for G.I. Joe? How do you take this?
I just want to. There's a couple of things with that. As an intro, I don't know if it's the best introduction for somebody coming into it, because it drops in at like random points at each different kind of storyline and stuff, and I don't necessarily feel that it's like the perfect thing for like someone that's not in, like, that hasn't read a G.I. or a Transformers or a Void Rivals comic. That said, the quality of this free comic book, I think, is phenomenal. Like, I love Free Comic Book Day. It's honestly weirdly one of those days, apart from yesterday, which I couldn't actually get out to. But usually we try and get to a store on Saturday, and I love it because I love getting the G.I. Joe issue, the Transformers, and any other things that are knocking about that I'm interested in. They could just be random. Sometimes it'd be like Aliens or Predator ones, because I love those too. But like, whatever it may be, I love getting it. I ended up spending more money than usual Free Comic Book Day, which is ironic, isn't it? But that said, it's probably in an Alanis Morissette song somewhere. Free Comic Book Day. Anyway, I'll stop. But effectively, I don't think it's the perfect thing for someone coming into it, but it is so good that I think you'd be really intrigued to find out more. So possibly it is a really good one, but I don't think it's perfect to give you what's going on. It doesn't really tell you what's going on, if you know what I mean. Like it doesn't tell you exactly what you need to know. That first page's got some stuff in it, like some quick recap, but I don't think you're really going to understand what's going on fully, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, so I'll start. Yeah, general context, Free Comic Book Day. A lot of the Free Comic Book Day content sort of doesn't feel necessarily massively satisfying. This is the general sweep of Free Comic Book Day, not specifically this. That it might be just a one
cute
and done
quirky
story, or cute and quirky, or just sort of little taster bites of a few pages of stories here or there. Or something sort of that's meant to kind of draw you into some other big event that's about to happen, and more often than not, I sort of I'm left a little bit unsatisfied. I thought, last year's Energon Universe Special was incredible. They had sort of really big,
I loved it,
a team and really substantial and important stories for the worlds that this was set
Cobra
in.
La Focus was really good as well, wasn't it? The Cobra La Focus,
and they had Ryan Otley doing the art, just about as big as A-lister artist as you can get at the moment. So against that context, I thought the Transformers one was, a smaller story, fewer pages, and it was more just sort of like a little bit of a play in the world. And I think that probably it was just a story that Daniel Warren Johnson sort of wanted to tell and wanted to draw and wanted to have a bit of fun. And they're like, yeah, if you want to come back and draw something, you can do whatever the heck you want. And if this is the story you want to do it. So it's a little bit inconsequential in terms of the overall story, but a little bit of fun. Void Rivals felt a little bit more in the continuity and in the weeds, and a little bit less easily accessible and understandable to someone coming cold to it. It felt like there was a little bit just less sort of visual flair and a bit more sort of setting things up, doing a bit of business kind of there. So I was less wowed by that of the three. And then in terms of the G.I. Joe story, it was felt, as Tim hinted, it was really good, really enjoyed it. Good story, great. Some sort of quite surprising moments in there, as we'll get to in a second. And then really serving as like the glue between G.I. Joe 6, this, and then sort of the story continuing with this new, slightly more Transformers coherent bit to the plots, and it felt like it had a purpose, and it had it did some real important part of storytelling and part of this story, this universe that they're telling. So like the opposite of inconsequential, but I think it also serves an interesting purpose as well in terms of the Energon universe and the readers that you've got, and sort of just giving a really clear signal to the Transformers readers. You need to be paying attention to G.I. Joe because there's some important elements of the Transformers lore that is happening in parallel in this other book, and possibly that's an interesting sort of dynamic to the story as well.
The G.I. Joe part of this comic could have just been the standard issue, like it could have just been issue 7 or issue, do you know what I mean? Like it could have been, it was that strong. Like obviously more pages, and you can pack some more cool stuff in there. Probably get rid of the introduction page so that you've got that sort of, you already got that information because you're reading the comic in that kind of order. But I think it could easily stand up as just a standard issue within the run of issues, and sometimes that isn't the case with Free Comic. In fact, the majority of the time it isn't the case with Free Comic Book Day. It is like, there can be some really awesome stuff in there, but for the most part it is like a side thing, or it's like a flashback, or it's a cutesy thing. Like it's like, I instantly think of like Star Wars Tales, was it? Those kind of like multiple different stories within an issue that were just like, some were really ridiculously silly, some were really dark, and some were really important, and some were out of. So it was like, it felt a little bit like that. This issue, right? Really solid though for Joe. Like amazing.
Chris is referring to a quarterly Dark Horse Comics anthology that ran in the 90s and 2000s called Star Wars Tales. this really does feel like the issue that comes between 6 and 7. And a year ago, we were wondering where the G.I. Joe story would wind up in trade paperback. And the answer was it's at the end of the Duke collection, because it's the epilogue to the Duke miniseries. And I think this is going to be the opening 16 pages to G.I. Joe Volume 2, because it's by the team that's going to draw G.I. Joe 7 through 12, and it's the stuff that happens right after 6 and right before 7. So maybe this will be at the end of G.I. Joe Volume 1, and that's a way, for them to sort of get your eyeballs ready for the new art team.
Yeah.
But I think both of you make good points that it can be very hard to write and draw a story that is both welcoming to novices or new readers, that is really good and also really important, particularly when the publishers are juggling Marvel and DC are publishing 50 titles a month or 70 titles a month, and even though they're getting their publishing plans figured out in advance, Free Comic Book Day has got to be to some extent an afterthought, because if you have, it's like we've got a big deal event miniseries and it's starting in March. It's like, well, that Free Comic Book Day doesn't help that. It would only help the event that's coming in May or in the summer, maybe the fall. But by then, sort of people have forgotten. And so if you have an art team that's doing an arc on Amazing Spider-Man or the next big Marvel event miniseries, can you pull them off that for the half month or month it would take to do the sort of essential Free Comic Book Day story? And so, yes, as Chris said, you get these sort of prologue chapters that don't add up to much. And this is an interesting sort of side benefit of Skybound continuing to keep this line small at 3 books. The letters pages keep saying, we're just going to do 3 books. And people have said, how about some spotlights? How about a side miniseries? And if you've only got to worry about 3 creative teams, you can slot in a comic like this that can be quite consequential. I also wanted to point out that there are no ads in this comic. The back cover isn't an ad for other Skybound stuff or Energon Universe stuff. The inside back cover is a thank you message. Thank you for making Free Comic Book Day great. And I think that means that sort of Diamond comic distributors, I think this ad is sort of theirs, because Diamond owns Free Comic Book Day, right? Skybound is a participant, Image is a participant. And some of the Free Comic Book Day comics, you're getting a bit of a story, and then the next page is like, okay, go read. Okay, it's like the Marvel Fantastic Four Free Comic Book Day comic this year is I think it was 8 pages, I forget. And it's written and drawn by the team that's about to launch a new Fantastic Four issue #1. And this story doesn't feel consequential, but it makes for a nice little prologue, or maybe when there's a collection of the first 6 issues of this new FF book, it'll be, tucked in at the end. But at the end of that comic, they say, hey, there's a new Fantastic Four issue #1 coming soon. And that would be totally okay. I sort of half expected this Energon Universe comic to maybe drop the Void Rival story and gain 6 pages of ads, right? Buy the G.I. Joe collections, buy the Transformers collections, buy the Void Rivals collections, watch the Invincible show.
Do you know why? They're doing all right. Skybound seems to be doing okay. They're selling so well. They probably don't need to waste the money on ads, right?
Well, I mean, waste the money. It's
you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
I didn't mean because you make money from ads, of course.
Well, I mean, it's a kind of outreach where if someone reads this comic, they might think, okay, well, now what? And maybe Skybound. I think it shows confidence that Skybound trusts the person who stumbled onto this comic to ask someone at that store, or like Google it, or just go to the Skybound website, or ask a friend. And this free issue is, I think, pound for pound, it's the best Free Comic Book Day comic of 2025, because it's got 3 really good stories, right? And yes, the Transformer story does not move the needle forward in terms of plot, but what a great character study on Jazz. And in only 6 pages, right? How often do you read a satisfying 6-page comic story? How often do you read a satisfying 6-page comic book story in a free comic book day comic? So what I see here is a lot of confidence, and that just makes me appreciate and respect Skybound and its approach and the Energon Universe that much more. And just one last thing, I realized this is the second year in a row that we as Joe fans, Transformers fans, have gotten an Energon Universe free comic book day comic. And, you know, with Marvel, there used to be one free comic book day comic a year. And it's like, well, the night before a Spider-Man movie opened, and the first Saturday in May, there'll be a free comic book day Spider-Man comic. And then the next year, an X-Men movie opened the night before, right? Or, you know, whatever year Batman Begins came out. I think there was a Batman free comic book day comic. And, you know, Marvel's now doing 4 or 5 free comic book day comics a year because they've also got Star Wars and they've got kids comics. So the sort of the connection to like the big movie of the summer is smaller because there's so many movies and there's so many comics. But, you know, Skybound didn't have to do, I mean, you know, there could have been an Invincible presents Battle Beast free comic book day comic. Wouldn't that make sense? That's their big next launch. But I think besides the confidence, Skybound also understands that they need to keep reminding people to pay attention to the Energon Universe. And I got excited, like, wait, is there going to be another one of these in 2026? A free story with all 3 of these sets of characters? So it feels really sort of lucky for us fans.
Yeah.
I think if it continues to be successful, 100%, because it is, that's the thing. This Energon Universe is doing incredibly well. Like, it, you know, people are loving it. People are picking it up. It's incredible stuff. And long may it continue. Yeah, I definitely think there'll be another one of these next year with all 3 of them combined.
Yeah,
almost certainly.
It seems to be doing well for them, and long may it continue. Yeah, it's sort of, as you pointed out, Tim, it does feel a bit strange that there isn't sort of adverts in the book for the other titles. You know, you see it in the back of the normal issue, like G.I. Joe #6 would be advertising, you know, G.I. Joe #7, but it would also be saying, here's the other things happening in the Energon Universe. So it does seem like a bit of a strange omission, but maybe it's your point just of, we want to have as much story in here as much as possible, and doing that would use up another page that could be another story page. The G.I. Joe story just has a to be continued. In the back of the Void Rivals one, it's a bit more of a sort of direct look ahead. It says, the Quintesson War begins in Void Rivals issue 25, which also in itself is a bit weird because the next issue that's coming out is issue number 19. So this is, you know, jumping ahead 6 or so issues ahead in that Void Rivals bit. So it will be, you know, it is definitely looking ahead, but I guess it's beginning to build up that bit of, here's something that's going to be important. Start the hype.
The inside back cover that has this free comic book day thank you. Certainly when this comes out as a regular issue with a cover price, that back cover will be a normal in-house Skybound ad. And the back cover won't be a wraparound. So that may be just the Skybound logo, or that may be an ad. I don't think they do ads on their back covers. But here's just one more contrast. This year's free comic book day offering from Dynamite is a Thundercats Powerpuff Girls crossover, because there's going to be a crossover. Thunderpuffs. Powerpuff Cats.
Our cats.
There's going to be a crossover miniseries coming out. Dynamite has both licenses. Their Powerpuff Girls comics have been really good. Their Thundercats comics and its spin-off have looked pretty good. And the story was the first half in the free comic book day comic, and the second half was ads, and that's okay, right? Like, comics are expensive to publish, and you know, publishers are either, you know, barely breaking even or losing a little bit of money on this. This is a big advertising promotional opportunity. I don't fault a publisher for doing an 8 a 16-page lead story, and then the rest is all ads. But it's not fun.
Not many publishers are making 4 million per compendium Kickstarter, though, are they? So.
Okay, while that is true, Skybound did not make a lot of money as profit off of that Kickstarter, because the compendia were so expensive to print and ship. And you might argue that it's harder if that Kickstarter campaign was a runaway success, because it took a lot more time and energy for Skybound's limited staff to like continually promote it and then answer all the questions and
deliver on it.
Yeah, and deliver on it. So Skybound has some money, yes, but you know that they can't give away a lot of comics for free.
Here's me just thinking Skybound are the Amazon of the comics world right now.
But Frank makes the point that you know, looking forward ahead to this Quintesson War in issue 25, that it could well be released into 2026. I mean, if you know, we're talking about 6 months on from where we are now, it could very easily be all the way at the end of this year or even in 2026. I don't know that it's necessarily been delayed massively. They sort of took an intentional hiatus, I guess, to help as a creative team get up to date. But also, they said in terms of continuity and getting the 3 stories sort of working at the in a continuity in lockstep, that they didn't want to get too far ahead in terms of where they were for Void Rivals compared to where they are with G.I. Joe and Transformers. So they said that was a part of the thinking of the little break that they did have on Void Rivals.
Should we talk about the spoiler? There's a guy in this G.I. Joe story.
There's loads of spoilers.
Now this red crawl on the bottom of the screen, this scrolling lower third. Folks, we're gonna spoil the Energon Universe.
Yeah, it's going to be entirely spoiled, more than how we normally spoil things in both respects.
Mark, do you want to turn that off now?
Usually they just ruin it.
Okay.
Usually they just ruin it. They don't spoil it.
It's very distracting. So do you want to do a bit of a page turn to get there, or would you like to go direct to the spoiler immediately?
Hound is transformed. I'll just give a 1-sentence plot summary up until the page turn. Hound has transformed and revealed himself. Clutch is shocked.
Yep.
Clutch throws his Cobra Energon grenade. It hits Hound. Hound is halfway through transforming and freezes up. And
to just draw a line under that. That's why in G.I. Joe issue 6 they made such an effort to show this Cobra grenade in Clutch's bag, so that it could foreshadow the fact that he's got this special Cobra Energon grenade in his bag ahead of this confrontation with with Hound, such that when he then uses
Stop calling Hound Clutch.
Didn't I get it right the second time
Everyone
round?
keeps calling Hound Clutch. I also like the fact that he only gets a Kiko before getting stuck.
Yeah, he gets half a Kiko.
car key. Yeah. Kiko car key. Doesn't get the car key bit at the end.
So we cuts to a Quonset hut with a little water tower out in the desert. So I don't know if this is like a mile away from the pits or 150 miles away from the pit, but still out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, I did have a bit of a sort of a glitch looking at that. I thought, hold on, is that the pit that they're going to? Because shorthand for the pit is like Quonset hut or 3 Quonset huts and a water tower, but it becomes obvious that it's not. So this is a singular Quonset hut with water tower, which looks to be unrelated to the pit, but in the same vicinity geographically. And he was dragging Hound.
Thank you.
Behind him in a van.
So he must have gone back. He must have gone back to the pit for a vamp.
Which
is totally fine. Right. He bumps into the Baroness again. She's like, did you get your head clear? He's like, no, things are much worse. I need to take a much longer drive. Gotta get another Jeep. She's like, didn't you take a Jeep? Like, nope. Anyway, so
I definitely didn't destroy the other one.
It's not an alien. Duke's crazy. So Clutch opens up the garage door, and inside is a guy in a gray jumpsuit with some red details, and his name is
already you've just given it away.
His name with 2 Ks is Tracker. So, okay, immediately several things occur to me that are very exciting. One, Skybound has also gotten the rights to Mask, Mobile Armored Strike Command, the Kenner 1980s brand, which was an action vehicle line, which did have a 65 episode syndicated weekday TV cartoon, just like G.I. Joe, just like Transformers. It's a fun show. It's not as good as G.I. Joe and Transformers. You can stream it on Tubi.
Or not Tubi.
And what's the other one? Moby? Oh, sorry. You're making a joke.
Roku.
Maybe it's Roku. I can't remember.
Or not Roku.
Hulu. That is the question.
It's Mask. Okay, so Mask was Kenner. When Hasbro acquired Kenner, it got Mask. And they tried to bring Mask back as Vortec in 1990. I think it's 7. Didn't last. There was a toy line and a TV cartoon that no one remembers. And when IDW, in the middle of phase 2 of its long-running Transformers continuity, decided to add a bunch of other Transformers brands and make kind of a Hasbro-verse, which wasn't happening in Hollywood, IDW, which already had G.I. Joe and Transformers, grabbed Action Man, ROM, Micronauts, and Mask, and then took them and G.I. Joe and said, hey, they've always been in the Transformers continuity that we've been publishing for a while. And so for a year, IDW, this is in like 2017, made some Mask comics, and they were pretty good. There was one big change. Matt Tracker is no longer a Caucasian guy with blonde hair. He's a black guy with black hair. And guys, help me out. There has been a Matt Tracker G.I. Joe figure?
Yes.
When?
Then Revolution box set.
Yeah, the 2017 San Diego Comic-Con International 2017 HasCon and also Hasbro Toy Shop in that set. 2017 was, and they linked it up, and it was specifically trying to align to what was going on with the IDW comics at the time. So
Yeah.
they.
There's also been a
Revolution.
white Matt Tracker in the 25th anniversary as well.
Yeah, so like a year or two earlier, that same figure, but as a white guy, had been released.
Well, it wasn't the same figure. I think it was like the base body was, some of it was reused, I think, but I think there's a lot of new on that.
It looks fairly different. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So twice Hasbro has put, so once in the G.I. Joe toy line.
Yeah, directly.
There was a Matt Tracker figure, and his code name is Tracker, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And his accessory is the Annihilator's backpack helicopter, right?
Yeah, the helicopter backpack, but in green to make it look like Condor.
Because they weren't going to make, Hasbro was not going to make a new Mask toy line, but as a fun, homage or trial, right? Maybe if people freaked out and it sold really well, they would have done more of them, right? So in the canon G.I. Joe toy line 10 years ago, Hasbro did release one Mask figure. And then there's this Revolution box set, which referred to all the IDW comics that had a shared continuity that were coming out at the same time. And so this page turn reveal in the Free Comic Book Day comic. Yeah.
I'll just call out one more thing as well. So in terms of the sort of the race swap of updating Tracker so that he's an African American, it was the comic book writer Brandon Easton, who was writing the IDW comic, who takes the credit for this particular change. So he said that he felt it was a good idea to have a black man be a heroic figure instead of a sidekick, because there were other African-American characters in Mask. And so there was a question as to why make the change. So that is the new Matt Tracker from the IDW Revolution world, and in contrast to the Diddy Matt Tracker
that came with a flying
Did he?
car.
Diddy, you mean small, not the hip hop performer?
That's right.
Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah, I'm not making
okay.
any character aspersions.
Little white guy, not regular human black guy.
Yeah, and
not actual person black guy.
They sort of like this similar scale to these page punchers, or they're about that size, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like 2. Is it 2.5?
About 2 and a bit.
Okay, so
yeah.
So folks, so you turn the page on this Energon Universe comic, and you see Matt Tracker. So Skybound has made a deal with Hasbro for the rights to Mask, or it was always a part of the Energon Universe and they just kept it a secret. B, the first person to show up is someone who has already been a kind of emissary to G.I. Joe from the world of Mask because of those action figures we just mentioned. Matt Tracker, right? This isn't a villain from Mask. It's not the kid or the robot, the hilarious R2-D2 kid robot, T-Bob. It's not a villain. And 3, it's not the white guy Matt Tracker. It's the black guy Matt Tracker. And then sort of you take all this together and it's all very exciting and makes sense because Mask was always halfway between G.I. Joe and Transformers as a concept anyway, because it's a good guy team versus a bad guy team. The bad guy team wants to steal MacGuffins and take over the world. And
Venom.
And then they all have vehicles that half transform into slightly unfolded cars that fly, or slightly turned over motorcycles that are boats, or SUVs that have battering rams. And so it's an SUV that has a battering ram and like can fire a missile.
Sports cars that split sort of in half to create some weird guy standing in the top of it, moving around. Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's a really fun line. And in the live action Transformers movies, when I don't know if it's the 4th or the 5th one, I didn't see those two. There's a point where some of the humans have taken some of the Transformers technology and they're starting to make their own weapons or something. And it's like, you're starting to describe Mask, even though back in the 80s, again, it was Kenner, it wasn't Hasbro, it was not actually related to G.I. Joe or Transformers, but conceptually it's the midpoint. And then what this also suggests is that there could be a 4th series coming from Skybound in the Energon Universe. Now, I don't think in the next year we're going to get a Mask issue number 1. I think that Skybound is going to keep G.I. Joe and Transformers chugging along, and a Mask character or 3 will show up again in 6 months, and it's just going to be fun and about storytelling and not about expanding the universe or brand extensions. Because I think we're sticking it to 3 is, I think they're not lying or fibbing in the letters pages, but also, I even felt this yesterday, right? A couple times people looked at the Energon Universe Free Comic Book Day comic at my store, and I picked it up and I sidled up to them and I said, do you know about the Energon Universe? And they said, no. And then I pulled, Transformers Volume 1 and Void Rivals Volume 1 off the graphic novel shelves, or I pulled out Void Rivals Issue 1, which we still have in our recent back issues. And I pulled out Duke number 1 because there's a Transformer on the cover. And I said, I have a much longer version of this spiel. And I said, it's a shared universe. And so this has 3 stories. And so I have found it very useful that 2 years in, there are 8 soft covers to point people to, which is a lot. But there are 3 very clear starting points. It's not like, I'll just pick on IDW, sort of in the midst of Revolution. There's a Mask series and a Micronaut series and a ROM series and an Action Man miniseries and 3 Transformers series plus some specials and a G.I. Joe series, right? And on and on and on. Okay, so guys, how do you feel about not the idea of Matt Tracker's involvement,
before you ask that question, and I forget to put it up here. Infinite Entertainment put this in the chat. I don't remember if you pointed it out. We didn't. But Void Rivals issue 17 referenced the Prismosians from Visionaries as well. I was just flicking through and I couldn't find it, but
because their planet is Prismos.
Prismos. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got potentially hints there
at visionaries in this shared universe. Infinite Entertainment. If you can point me in the direction of exactly where it was, that would be good, because I wasn't able to spot it as I was flicking through in the background there.
I think it was in the last. I think it was in the last issue, right? I remember reading it pretty recently.
I might be looking even
The
at
last Void
the
Rivals
wrong issue.
Okay, guys. So now that I've talked a lot about the idea of Matt Tracker showing up, how do you feel about what he actually does?
In the issue, what he does,
Yeah.
he helps out, that he
helps Hound.
He helps Hound. He seems very unfazed by the prospect of this giant transforming robot arriving on his doorstep. He says, Clutch says, "Don't freak out, okay? But I need your help." And he just replies, "Finally, bring it in." Why are you not surprised to see a giant robot, Matt? So it's kind of hinting at this shared experience of these two characters, that they know each other without specifically calling it out. It also serves as a little reminder that Matt is surprised that Clutch has joined a military organization, and reminding us that he's not quite so much from that background, that he's, racing and mechanic and that kind of thing. And hinting that there's maybe more than meets the eye to Matt Tracker's experience with Transformers, which is intriguing. But I also like this opening up this world to this, more possibilities and things that can surprise us.
I thought it was interesting that, one, he's working on a Spectrum, which is pretty cool, but we don't really see that in play at any point, obviously, because he's working on it. So
tell us what that means, Chris. What's this?
His helmet.
Okay, his Spectrum.
It's on screen right now.
As the theme song says, Spectrum's got such supervision.
Yeah, I thought you talked about like a ZX Spectrum Sinclair.
He's working on his ZX Spectrum, clearly.
That might have been cutting edge technology in the early 80s, but it doesn't
once again, for our American listeners, what are you guys talking about? I know, but maybe they don't. What's a Spectrum?
It was like a personal home personal computer sort of. I think it was an English branded one.
Yeah.
And very popular in the UK in the early 80s, and then sort of superseded by the likes of products from Commodore and Amstrad and so on. And it would have tapes that when you loaded them up to play the games, they would be going.
All right, enough of explaining Chris's jokes. Then a Transformer shows up who had previously been significantly injured in an issue of Transformers and then was recently healed. Ravage shows up. There's a very cool panel on page 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Page 10, panel 3 is a POV panel. We are seeing the two humans and the Autobot from Ravage's perspective. And so the panel is sort of circular shaped. There's a little bit of a fisheye lens effect. And we're at like 2 feet tall because of sort of the height of the three good guys, and then it's all done in red tones. Once again, a human tries to fire a pistol at a Cybertronian, and it doesn't work. Second time this issue, and then Clutch pulls what looks like, since we've been referring to Transformers the movie, what looks kind of like an Energon Yummy out of his bag. It looks like a Energon
stick of gum.
Energon Yummies are a little bit smaller. These are from Cup and Hot Rod used them to tame the Sharkticons in the '86 movie. What Clutch is holding here looks sort of like the size of an energy bar that a human would eat, like a candy bar, but it's smooth and pink and glowing a little bit. So I want to ask you guys, is this something that we've seen previously when the Joes were dealing with that piece of Cybertron? Or is this sort of a reasonable leap from the fact that Clutch was in a Cobra base and he took that grenade? So what else might he have in his bag? But this was a little bit of a surprise to me. Oh, he's got another Energon thing
Tuba
that you can eat, or you can plug into some technology, or And
Yeah, I just assumed he'd grabbed a bunch of different things from when he was in the Cobra base, and one of them just happened to be a little bit of chewing gum with Energon infusion into it.
Okay.
The Energon infused chud.
And then Hound beats up Ravage, and Ravage runs away. And then Match Tracker and Clutch have a little understanding at the end.
A kiss. They share a kiss.
man.
You forgot that bit.
And then we've got this 2-page coda, which I know Mark wants to talk about.
Before we move on, can I just finish my point from before I had to explain what Spectrum was? Matt Tracker, in terms of his appearance in this particular this segment, I would zoom in on every panel just to kind of see if I could find any sort of other homage or any sort of anything to highlight, something else about the Mask universe. The only thing that really made me think, oh, that's pretty cool. And this is pretty obvious because he's in a garage, and obviously he's got a mechanic set up because he's fixing stuff. But you see the tire tracks running out of the building, and it just makes me think, oh, okay, well, clearly Thunderhawk is there somewhere. It's not clear where it is, or it's probably out somewhere or gone. But I kind of feel like his vehicle, that's the evidence of his vehicle leaving or coming into that building, and it's either under the ground in that concept hut or it's somewhere else entirely. So that's kind of that's the only thing I could really see, and it's the panel that's directly next to this one that's on screen at the moment. So for anyone that's trying to look for that, you'll see 2 very clear tire tracks going out of that garage, which isn't weird or abnormal, of course, but I'm just thinking it's there's no sign of Thunderhawk anywhere. There's no sign of any vehicle other than the tracks going into that hut. So either the vehicle has left the building, or it is underneath the building, hidden, or just invisible. Maybe, I don't know.
So the Thunderhawk is the red Camaro that Matt Tracker drives. That's the original toy, and it can also fly, and then there's a second reference that you're making indirectly here, Chris, which is what's the base called? The
Boulder Hill.
Boulder Hill is a gas station that's set up against a mountain, and this was a playset that Kenner actually made, and it's on the cartoon. And
it's phenomenal. And
you can move a bit of the gas station so that it becomes sort of an exterior Mask headquarters, and then the top of the mountain is a boulder that can roll down and squash people. And so I think, Chris, what you're implying here is that this Quonset hut and this water tower are perhaps another converting base for this Mask character, even if it's
illusion is the ultimate weapon.
And illusions are also valuable weapons. So even if this is not a version of that playset, it doesn't look like it, but conceptually it might be the same thing. Even if we sort of never come back to this location or talk about it, we can maybe just.
He says he's going to move on. He says he's leaving.
Sorry,
anyway.
sorry, I ruined your life, buddy. Sorry about your place. It's fine. It's time I moved on anyway.
Is there any chance that if we push any buttons, your toyetic secret hideout can become more toyetic before you move on, before my alien friend and I drive away?
It turns into an upside down boat.
That can fly. Mark, do you want to talk about the 2-page coda?
I will. I'm just to put a pin in Infinite Entertainment's clever observation that I've yet to see anyone else mention anywhere. So you get the gold star. He said it's around about page 13. Rodimus and Hound are talking. That's not Hound. That's Springer. Rodimus.
Springer
and Springer are talking, and Springer says, try spending thousands of years in the wasteland. This is a Prismodian wedding by comparison.
Prismosian.
That thing by comparison. So it's there, it's true, it exists.
One last pin in the Visionaries references. When IDW added Visionaries, they didn't have their own series. They had a 5-issue crossover miniseries with Transformers. They got top billing It ended up being one of the two sort of setups for the Unicron miniseries, which ended the entire continuity, but in a good way. Writer editor John Barber and the rest of them got to wrap up the 10-year story, the 15-year story. And then I think the Visionaries had been, I think before that, recently alluded to in First Strike, which was the like second event crossover miniseries with G.I. Joe and Transformers. So when we're talking about IDW and Visionaries, it's a pretty small volume of stories and comics, and there was no just Visionaries comic, right? Marvel did, what was it, 5 issues in like 87, which started with an adaptation of the opening episodes of the TV cartoon. And unlike G.I. Joe and Transformers, that comic didn't take off, the toy line didn't take off, the show didn't take off. And so
I'll also add there's a phenomenal song by Word Burglar. I say it's phenomenal, called Spectral Mike, which I say it's phenomenal because I produced it. So go check that out on what's the album called? I've completely forgotten now. It's the one with like all of the Transformers, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars kind of vibes. It's amazing. Yeah, go check out Spectral Mike. Go check it out.
Mark, you want to talk about this 2-page coda at the end of the G.I. Joe story?
Yeah, so we sort of get, the Hound Clutch story sort of finishes up, and then we just, there's a bit of a bleed through of just one panel to this coda, which was where as Clutch and Hound drive off into the literal sunsets, he talks about his Energon weapon. He says, well, it wasn't off any giant robots. I stole it off these guys called Cobra. And then Hound, tell me more about this Cobra, as we zoom in on an upside down Stinger in a Florida swamp surrounded by bodies of these sort of Cobra infantry soldiers, as we turn the page and we see that Buzzer is there wreaking some bloody revenge following the events of Cobra Commander, where Cobra Commander and Nemesis Immortal arrived and just upended the whole of the Dreadnought way of life, aka wiping out most of them and doing untold damage to a whole bunch of the rest of them. And in terms of what we saw of Buzzer last, he was I think midair, being held aloft by Nemesis. I'm just trying to find the right page. 18. Here we go. So yeah, he was lifted off the ground, up in the air, and in these middle panels of what's in the screen, there's a sort of like a nasty kind of
yikes
cracking happening to his arm as he's there, and as he falls down, his sort of arm is quite bent at a wrong angle. And that was the last we saw of Buzzer up until this point. And one of the things that I thought, looking at this one-page splash of Buzzer, is that you can't see his right hand holding the chainsaw. So either he's holding it by a handle and it's just blocking the view of his hand, or he's done an Ash.
That's an Evil Dead stuff.
He's done an Evil Dead and sort of got rid of his arm and sort of just incorporated it with the chainsaw to make an arm saw.
For those of us not buying all the classified toys, this is not the chainsaw treatment from this toy line?
No,
the classified treatment of the Dreadnoks is pretty faithful to the original first iterations of them. There wasn't a huge amount of change, but sort of adding a few extra tattoos and that sort of accessories and that kind of thing, but sticking pretty closely to the original model design.
How would you guys feel, since we've been talking about Mask and Visionaries, how would you feel if Visionaries never shows up in these 3 books in this universe? It's just that one reference, which would then just be an Easter egg. And if Mask and Venom, the bad guy team, never form, and we just see Matt Tracker, 2 or 3 more times in the next 2 or 3 years of comics.
I think it's all down to how it's kind of taken by the fan. I think like how the feedback's probably going to be quite important here. So if people are seeing, when people see this and read it and they get a kick out of it, and Skybound see that, and there'll probably be an element of gauging the response to a map tracker showing up in the issue. And I think they'll probably, more than like, I personally think we'll probably see some sort of mask thing in the future. If they're doing it to the point of showing map tracker in an issue, I think we'll probably see mask at some point in the future. I don't know if it's going to be in the near future. One of the things I think I was told ages ago was when they do some of these Hasbro sort of like contract sort of things, or when they're doing these sort of Hasbro elements where like comics and Hasbro do deals, a lot of the time Hasbro will offer them brands. They'll say, these are what you have to offer under this current kind of, or like a not contract but like deal, or you know what I'm saying, like the discussion around this particular project will give you the option to use our brands, if you know what I mean, rather than, depending on how big the brands are, of course, rather than just this one, and this one. A lot of the time they will throw brands at them to say like, hey, do you want to try this, or do you want to do this, or do you want to do that? I think we've heard from, I mean, you guys have interviewed him as well, I believe, but like different licensing people at Hasbro. Was it Michael Kelly you guys spoke to as well? Like, I've in speaking with a lot of these guys, they'll often try and say, do you want this as well? Do you want this as part of the situation? And they, like you said before, they could have had Mask Visionary. It could have been offered the entire gamut that was offered to IDW, or that IDW had worked out with doing their Revolution and the First Strike and stuff like that. So it might have just been like, want to try these as well, see what happens? Or maybe Skybound had asked for it, and Hasbro, being who they are, was just like, yeah, go nuts, why not? So I think it's and oftentimes it sounds like it's quite loose, and I don't mean like too loose that you can just use images and whatever whenever you want, but like you can do stuff and then send it for approval and they will say yay or nay. And it's one of those things where it could just be as simple as that. Like, it might not have ever been discussed that Visionaries is going to be part of this, but the writer was like, let's just sneak Prismosian in there, because that's not doing anything. That's not doing anything from a legal standpoint. It could be the planet of Primordia, and they just call them Prismosians. You know, like, it could be something they could get around it like that easily. No one is really doing anything illegal there, if that's just like a little hint, homage. We saw it actually in this is a really good example, I think. We saw it in the short-lived G.I. Joe series. God, that's going to drive me mad now, where it was rebooted, completely changed to very much like like we had like there was a Lightfoot was a black character. I'm trying to think who else was in there that was like, the Dreadnoks were like a completely different like vibe. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about? Why can't I remember what the reboot was called?
There was the one called,
it was like
that was later called World on Fire, which was where they're kind of Cobra's one and they're the rebels kind of thing.
Yes. So in that, they snuck in Red Shadows, I think Action Force, and some other stuff as well. They snuck those in to the issue, even though they weren't actually available, but they were allowed to do it. They got the approval. So I think a lot of the time it's just really that sort of loose. And I think we're almost certainly going to see Mask. And I don't necessarily think we won't. I don't think we won't see Visionaries, but it's probably a bit further into the future, depending on how this Energon universe goes, because you've said it as well, they want to keep this nice and clean. 3 comics, you can keep a nice kind of control over that. And honestly, you could probably incorporate Mask without having to have a Mask issue 1. You could probably incorporate Visionaries without having to have a spin-off series, depending on how it's taken by the fandom, I guess.
Yeah, I think that with the Matt Tracker cameo that we've got here, I'm fine with that, and I'm even fine with it being as that for some time. It might be enough that they've sort of almost gone, yeah, we're opening up the world to this. We might not see them again for a while, but maybe year 5, that's going to be the big thing, the big crossover is going to be a mask event, but we've sort of just seeded it in our world that it's there should we want to return to it. I also wonder whether there could be potentially, because they're using this tracker design from the toy, the G.I. Joe toy, that maybe there's something there specifically in the licensing that might mean that they're able to access that character without the rest of the mask, even because it was released under sort of the G.I. Joe brand, that maybe there's a technicality there that he can be counted as a G.I. Joe.
That's a good point. I
never know.
It was Paul Aller, by the way. It was Paul Aller that did the G.I. Joe World on Fire that I couldn't remember before. And it was Paul that snuck those things into the issue. So shout out to Paul. Carry on, sorry.
I think I almost said this earlier, but it's worth spelling out. The fandom for Visionaries is very small, and the fandom for Mask is very small. And
also me.
I don't have a number. Number of people that I think would show up if there was a convention. I don't have a number of people who go to a certain website, but the number of websites for these two brands, fan run websites and discussion boards, does not compare to the amount of people and websites and man hours that have gone into G.I. Joe and Transformers, toy photography and plot descriptions of comics and indexes and lists and fan productions. And so Hasbro might be very pleased if Skybound asks, or if Hasbro says, oh, you also want these guys? And Skybound says yes, because it can only help Hasbro if these characters are put back out there every couple of years, beyond nostalgia, but as a little bit of, copyright renewal or like brand refreshing. But Skybound has to know that in 2025, even with Skybound behind it, let's say, full-blown Mask or Visionaries comic book is a risky proposition, right? Like a Transformers comic is going to sell, a G.I. Joe comic is going to sell. Something new by Robert Kirkman that's an accessible sci-fi concept is very likely going to sell. And so Skybound, besides just sort of keeping it streamlined, because three very good comics every month is a hard thing to make.
Quality
and making it, 3.5 or 4, doing a miniseries or something. I think we all, I shouldn't speak for Chris. I feel like Mark and I thought, maybe cynically or maybe just realistically, that by now there was going to be a crossover, like a numbered, like chapter 1, 2, 3, or an event miniseries, that was going to unite some of these factions, not just characters appearing in each other's books. And so Skybound has to know that if they rush out like an Optimus Prime miniseries, that might dilute sales on the Transformers comic. Because if you're a casual Transformers fan, you can just go get the Transformers comic. And if you're a diehard Transformers fan, you'll definitely keep reading it, and you can write letters saying, publish more, publish more. And Hasbro has to understand that if it encourages Skybound to expand, or Skybound expands and Hasbro says yes, that there can be some damage done to these brands if Skybound does add, let's say, Mask or Visionaries too much too fast, whether that's other comics or here in these comics, because the fandom is very small. It can be confusing or distracting, and it can backfire, right? And, I think a lot of people's sort of first impression when you say revolution, that this whole sort of storytelling era at IDW around 2017, when the Transformers universe expanded to include these other Hasbro characters, I read all those comics. I really liked it. They were different. Some of them were only okay. And I had a comic book store, so I could read them for free. But, people said, it's too many books, I can't keep track of it, or it's too expensive, I can't buy all of it. And I think you could say it backfired, right? I don't know that
failed miserably.
I don't know that it just fizzled, like, oh, sales went down. I think it was too much too fast. Some of it was only okay. And a lot of it was characters that there weren't enough fans for. And so fans left, and the books all faltered. And creatively, that was a disappointment for readers and creators. And then it must have been a business disappointment. I
have to say, I think Skybound have got the right experience, the right decision-making qualities here. I think they've done an absolutely amazing job so far on all of the Energon Universe, all of the issues. Honestly, like I haven't read one that I've been like hooked. Ever since they brought this out, I've been hooked, and I just think they make the right decisions. Whatever they probably end up doing will probably be the right decision. And I think with Mask, I think they could keep it within the G.I. Joe kind of issues very comfortably without going too crazy with it. And that way you're bringing the odd character in here and there, and then maybe they have a little arc, and then maybe they peace out and we see someone else later. Like, keep it going slowly but surely. Do it the way MCU did it in the movies. Slowly, just, build that universe first, and then when it's in that point of like, yeah, we can do this. We can do a little spin-off quickly. It doesn't have to be a long thing. You could do like a 5-issue miniseries or something that would like touch on the characters we've seen from the Mask universe. Do you know, from the Mask characters in the G.I. Joe universe. So like I think it's all doable, and I think there are lots of options for them to pursue based on what you just said, Tim, about small fandom, kind of audience, a small target audience with both Mask and Visionaries. I think you could definitely do some little minis just in the future when you've built enough equity in the next couple of years.
And what they've been really good at Skybound is just sort of the slow build of like just introducing a handful of characters at a time. So the G.I. Joe team itself, the Cobra team, they're both being kept relatively small, and they're kind of introducing, the odd character an issue as we go. It's not sort of all at once. It's the same with Transformers. It's keeping to a relatively small core cast of characters, and the same with Void Rivals. Whereas I think the misstep that IDW did was like, here's our toy box of all of G.I. Joe, all of the 300 or so characters. Let's just dump that out on the floor and have a play with those. Oh, and let's get the Transformers and dump those out on top of the same pile. And without that kind of...
And then grab somebody and do a suplex onto those toys.
There's also, there's two more sort of analogies I want to make, because before IDW overexpanded with the Revolution storyline, it had already gone from a series of Transformers miniseries to a Transformers ongoing monthly, which when it wrapped up split into 2 monthlies, which spun off a third what was effectively monthly. And and you can argue that, well, no, there are so many Transformers characters. This isn't like Spider-Man. It's like, well, he has 3 monthlies. He has had 3 monthlies. And so it's like, well, this one's going to have this villain, and this other series is going to focus on his adventures outside of New York or what have you. It's like, no, you really can have a Transformers comic that focuses on this set of Transformers, and then this other one where a bunch of them go into space or what have you. And those were all good Transformers comics, but it was a lot of comics for someone on a budget. And so over those 10 or 15 years, IDW was expanding and kind of maxing out its sort of readership bandwidth. And maybe the other comparison here is in terms of Skybound's slow build or steady build is, besides the Energon Universe, of course, there's A Real American Hero G.I. Joe, which up until this month that just passed with 5 issues of G.I. Joe, it had just been a monthly series. There hadn't been, a yearbook or a double-sized issue. There wasn't a big spin-off. And, maybe you could argue that even right now, one G.I. Joe comic in the Energon Universe and one Larry Hama G.I. Joe comic is sort of the max that G.I. Joe can bear in comics when they're, $4 or $5 in 2025. Even though there are hundreds of characters and factions and eras and continuities that you could have a third book or a special. But I think it's really valuable to imagine a bookshelf with the Energon Universe soft covers on it. The 4 miniseries, upcoming G.I. Joe Volume 1, 2 Transformers, 2 Void Rivals. That's a lot of Volume 1s, actually, but it can get a little confusing. But and you compare that to, like the way that like Marvel is sort of making it easy with its epic collections, the way that DC is making it easy with its DC Finest collections. Like, no, the entire 40 years of Amazing Spider-Man until sort of the Marvel rebirth of 2005. It's just going to be in like 39 numbered $45 volumes, and you can get them all. You can get your favorite era. So
I'll chip in with my thoughts just on in terms of what we were talking about in terms of kind of the expansion of these universes and so on. That I think they've handled this sort of G.I. Joe and Transformers coming together nicely. They've seeded it straight from the beginning, and they've built up to this this particular encounter with Clutch and Hound. I'm slightly nervous now that the genie's out of the bottle, that to the extent that we'll see Transformers and G.I. Joe on the same page frequently. I do like my G.I. Joe to be G.I. Joe focused, and I don't necessarily want too many giant metal robots sort of, wandering in frame and spoiling my suspension of disbelief of what is already quite a high premise. But that's my slight nervousness, but they have been doing it really well, what they have been doing, and so I'm they've earned that element of trust for now anyway.
Another kind of comment on the slow burn that you mentioned earlier, Mark, was the fact that I think everyone expected Baroness to be a Cobra and Mercer to be a Joe in like the first week or the second week or the third week, and then we're deep into this, and I can't see any changes happening. I can see the Baroness maybe switching sides more than I can see Mercer switching sides, is all I'll say on that. But I think that, if they've got some plan under there, if they've got a plan to change that at any point, I'm at this point, I'm just accepting them as where they are. I'm accepting the Baroness as a Joe and Mercer as a Cobra and just whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's this extra ingredient there that we're sort of constantly on the sort of, thinking ahead to how and when they might restore that status quo that we're more familiar with. So
how it was before, but they might not bother. That might just be a hardcore change.
Planting my flag right here. Matt Tracker is going to join Cobra in 2026
and get a boob job.
Nice.
He will be the new Baroness. Let's cut that. Oh no, we're live. Right. So there's more than just G.I. Joe in this, but we've been talking a lot already. So let's just very briefly kind of gloss over it a little bit. Tim, do you want to have and Chris, do you want to have a paragraph each on what you thought of these other stories in the issue?
I think I already did for Transformers, so I'll leave that one to Chris. For Void Rivals, I'll just say it's just a Transformers story. It doesn't have
basically
what's his name or his dad, the king, right, or the Handroid. It's just Wheelie and the Quintessons, and it all looks like the 86 Transformers movie. And there's a very cool moment on the final page, which I'm trying to remember if we saw anything like this in season 3 of the animated Transformers, when the Quintessons were showing up a lot, because season 3 was post movie, where here all 4 Quintessons who are standing around a sort of table hologram display talking about what they might do. They all switch their heads to the face of death, which is the red one with fangs, sort of the Dracula face. And they all say at the same time, war, right? So they're all sort of voting on what's going to happen next. It's the final page of this whole comic. And that's a fun moment and a little spooky, because that's a scary face, and the Quintessons are weird and scary, and they're promising, a great scale of violence for future issues of Void Rivals. I have a feeling, the final thing I'll say here, I'll pass the mic to Chris. I have a feeling that this Quintesson war that is coming in Void Rivals 25, I have a feeling that it's just going to be a story arc in Void Rivals, and this is not the crossover that we've been sort of promised and anticipating and dreading.
Although there is this peculiar shaped craft, which I guess is like a quintesson ship. It's probably been established already. That is the freaky looking pancake ship thing, stacked pancake ship thing that Pythona is tracking in the pages of Void Rivals. So I imagine that ship may be en route to that quintesson planet, if that's what that is.
Yes, what we see on the final panel of the Free Comic Book Day issue are 3 quintesson ships, as originally depicted in the '86 Transformers movie and throughout season 3 of Transformers, and the planet Quintesson, which is looks as much like the Eternia playset from Masters of the Universe as a floating asteroid base as it does a planet. Chris, thoughts on the Transformers and Void Rivals stories?
The Transformers story I thought was absolutely gorgeous, like beautifully drawn. I've got to say the artwork is phenomenal. And like in terms of the story, the kind of development of like a little kind of side development of Jazz's character was really cute. How it's sort of like a similar thing, like in the same response that a lot of people have to jazz, the art form, the musical art form. That's sort of like some people don't quite get it and some people do quite get it. And he's certainly one of those people that gets it, but he's in the minority, and the rest of them are kind of like, you know, they're in a band, they're performing and all this kind of stuff, and it's really great. And he just starts going absolutely free form, and he's in his own head and he's going absolutely crazy. And then they're trying to get his attention, and it's just like, Jazz, we're gonna have to talk, mate. And I love that. I think that's really fun. Kind of like almost like a very human kind of, you know, real sort of like thing with the way that jazz is taken as an art form in reality. And it's kind of like, it's fun that they've kind of added that to the Cybertronian sort of like angle. And then he's in this kind of situation where he's like, I'm not sure if is he doing some sort of like radio situation, not radio, but is he doing some sort of like communications situation here where he's picking up this sound that's coming through? Is he just on a radio?
I thought maybe he's on this sort of listening into radio and maybe picking up sounds of music from Earth, was my guess.
Right, that was my initial thought process on it, because he hears that and he thinks, oh, that's the perfect sound, like, and everyone's kind of like, you know, a little bit grated by it as well. And then later, much later on Earth, you see him kind of like peeling off from like from a group and during a mission, and he peels off because he hears a similar sound, not the same but a similar sound. And yeah, it takes him to this jazz bar, and he's kind of like outside, like listening to it. And Optimus Prime has that kind of really nice moment where he goes, oh, is this that thing you've been looking for? Is this the sound you've been after? And he says, which is quite interesting, and again, very like lots of layers to this. He says no, but it's darn close. And it's effectively, my kind of interpretation is, obviously jazz is so randomly different from one piece to the next. I mean, I joked about acid jazz earlier. There's so many different forms of music in general, but jazz definitely has that kind of very free form, like, you know, make it up as you go along sort of aspect to it. And I think part of it is that he heard one song, but obviously no songs are alike, especially when you're in like a free form jazz sort of band or whatever. And I feel like he's happy because he's found effectively what he's after, even though it's not the thing that he heard initially, if that makes sense. So that was my kind of grasping of that. It's like, well, yeah, he's happy because he's found it in a way, and he's almost realizing that it's not going to be the same each time, because that's what jazz is. It's this different beast each time. And that's what I grasped from that particular story. I don't know if you guys grasped that at all, but that was definitely from my, you know, from my experience with it. And in terms of the Void Rivals one, I mirror exactly what you said, Tim, on that one. Very much a Transformers story, really, more than anything else. But it is sort of kind of filling some sort of gap within that Void Rivals kind of continuity.
I'll just say one sentence. The jazz story, the Transformer story, is a character piece. It's not action. Jazz isn't on a mission. He's not like sneaking in and stealing something from Megatron. He's not running away from, the cassettes, like driving down a hill and Laserbeak's flying. It's about him. It's about what he wants to do and who he is. And and in that regard, it is an excellent use of 6 pages, because Daniel Warren Johnson makes the story really satisfying. But as Chris said, his art is just virtuoso. I mean, the page we're looking at right now, what Daniel Warren Johnson has done with Jazz's shoulders and the twist of each arm, and then the twist of each wrist, and then the twist of each finger as he's hitting keys and also turning knobs on this keyboard synthesizer. And then the following panel, panel 3, the sort of speed lines that describe the outline of Jazz's hand, where his thumb and his ring finger are down, but his other 3 fingers are splayed. But then Jazz is smiling as he's leaning in and twisting and sort of surging forward, and the forced curvilinear perspective on the keyboards. Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers issues, the ones that he drew, and his covers are a visual feast. And it's clear that he worked on this story, like wanted to craft a good story. And this is not just a well-written Transformer story, it's a well-written story, and it's a really good Free Comic Book Day story. And I think you might almost sort of skip past it, because it's like, no, tell me about how awesome the Transformers comic is. They're at war, they're on Earth. And what's here is like what he wants, and then he finds it on Earth. So it's much more poetic. It's not action.
I love the complexity of all the cables in the back of the keyboard as well, and just the little thing of like, how the shape of the keyboard creates that kind of shadow underneath it, and the cable shadows that he's done off that are just like, it's, I don't know, just really, really cool. And also it's supposed to be like, a play on the word Moog, I believe, the Moog synthesizer, and obviously it's a Zoog, I think it says on the back of his, which I think is a lovely touch as well. To be like a Cybertronian brand of piano, like is that even a thing? Like, I think that's brilliant.
But also I'll backtrack and say one more thing. What the first page has is this Autobot rock band, which is Daniel Warren Johnson being really playful, because we sort of assume that either because they're robots or because they're aliens, that they don't have an analog for music, or because, they're at war and there's no longer any culture like that. They're just surviving and scrounging. But if you're going to have them play in a band, it becomes this very, Blue Streak is just playing a guitar, right? Blur's just playing a guitar, and Glitchjumper is just on drums. Daniel Warren Johnson has just lifted this from all of the imagery of a very specific, sort of era in modern American music history. And so he's not cheating, but he's sort of grafting something familiar backwards. Because it's like, well, why wouldn't they like be pressing tiles on a wall to make their music, or like hanging upside down underwater and like vibrating frequencies? It's no, they're aliens, and yet like we want to see something that is analogous and familiar, and it works both ways, because they come here and they're Earth cars.
Yeah, exactly. I like the this seems to be a little homage as well to Cybertronic Spree a little bit.
Yeah,
like the band that dress up and stuff like that. I think that's kind of cool.
I've seen them twice.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're great. And yes, that's Mark, sometimes I talk about, it's like if I could buy one page from a comic, it's like what's the sort of the obvious page? It's like, oh, it's pages 2 and 3 where Hound is transformed and Clutch is like, who are you? It's like, no, it might be the rock band page.
It's the band.
The
or Jazz playing page on that.
Yeah, or
playing
Jazz
on that piano, man. Yeah. Beautiful.
So yeah, if you're not familiar, Google Cybertronic Spree and you'll find out more about that.
A Canadian cover cosplay band.
It's a niche.
That dresses up in spectacular Transformers costumes and plays like the Pokemon theme and like Guns N' Roses and Transformers songs and their own original. Shall we wrap up?
Absolutely. So We'll let Chris wrap up and jump off, and then I'll tease what's coming up in the future. So, Chris, if that sounds good with you, Chris.
You can find me at the Full Force podcast on YouTube and everywhere, pretty much, that you find videos of things and audio of stuff. We're everywhere. Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and then obviously all the socials and YouTube. Check it out. Full Force podcast, baby.
Very good, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us, hanging out and talking.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hopefully won't leave it quite so long, having you back again next time.
Chris, thank you for saying you had 1 hour and giving us 2.
You're welcome. I did not have this time to give, but you've got it. See you guys. Bye.
There we go. So thanks so much to Chris for joining us. Yeah, let's have a full force as well. I cut him off before he had a chance to do that. So there we go. I did want to just stick in a question from Infinite Entertainment, who asked, I'll try and find the comment, but in the meantime, I'll describe it. Essentially, he was saying that at his local comic book store, they are struggling to get the Joe and Transformers fans to sort of cross over and look at the other book and also explore Void Rivals. What's your secret, if you've got one, to getting people to explore more of the Energon universe?
That's a good question. Hand selling. You know, if someone is buying 1 or 2 of the series, I will take 5 minutes and walk them over and pull out the issues or pull out the soft covers and open it up to a page and say, this character appears, or, pick up Oblivion Song. It's like, oh, well, this writer who you might know from The Walking Dead, this artist had already done this really fun sci-fi book. But so far, we don't have a full spread where every one of our G.I. Joe and Transformers readers is also a Void Rivals reader. So this may sort of on its own start to take care more of itself in the future as the books become more connected and readers decide they just want more of the full story. But it's sort of like the X-Men books, a third of the readers will buy just the main one, X-Men. A third of the readers will buy a bunch of them, X-Force and Mystique, and then a third of them are just going to buy some of the other ones, like X Factor or Mystique. And unless you're like giving them a discount or lending them a book, which some stores might do, right? If you like it, come back and pay for it, and then maybe you'll be a regular reader. Some of it is back to the readers to do. Yeah,
sometimes stores will sort of say, stick in someone's pull box, this is a thing that I think you should be reading or would really enjoy. If you don't like it, bring it back and I'll refund you. But I don't think you're going to want to. I mean, you've got Energon Universe. You've got kind of this little logo up here, which shows that it's all part of the same thing. I guess stores could be, stacking things together, and like you say, hand selling. If you want to see the full extent of the universe, why not check out the other things? Certainly, having a book that emphasizes this is one universe with things that crossing over. Each one of those 3 stories, well, 2 of the 3 stories are crossover stories, essentially, aren't they? The Void Rivals, more so than probably any of the others.
Certainly, a sales tool, finger quotes in sales, because this was not, for sale to customers, but our G.I. Joe readers or our Transformers readers who didn't make it to Free Comic Book Day, we had already pulled copies of this from the free stack and put it into their pull boxes, their subscription files. So because it was important to read the next G.I. Joe or Transformers chapter, but also to say, hey, check out this other thing.
And speaking of promotion, if you are new to Talking Joe, you can find us at the website talkingjoe.co.uk. That points to all of the places that we are at. If you've not yet liked and subscribed and all of those things, why not take the time to just do that? Well, I think at time of recording, we're on about 860 YouTube subscribers. It's gradually, slowly ticking up. it would be really great if we can hit the next milestone, 900 before too very long.
Listeners, viewers, you just can't imagine the jingle that Mark is going to compose and sing when we get to 1,000 subscribers. So, just, the more people you can get to join, I can't imagine the puns that he's going to come up with, words that rhyme with 1,000. Only you can get us there, folks.
Give me some time. And yeah, as a channel, as a podcast, we've been doing an awful lot. Big thanks to Tim for joining me on that journey. Just in the last few weeks, since G.I. Joe issue 315, we have covered that issue. We have spoken to editor of ARA, Alex Antoni. We've spoken with the artist, Chris Mooneyham, who's been drawing many of the issues since issue 301. We've had 5 silent missions, one-shots coming out over the month of April, and we've recorded episodes for each and every one of them, talking to artist Phil Hester, Danny, Andrew Cronky, and Diana Davis along the way. We've also been into the Energon Universe, and we've spoken about G.I. Joe issue 6, as well as this particular issue, the Free Comic Book Day 1. And then we are back for G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 316, which comes out next week. So we will be back again to cover that. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but it feels like a sprint at times as well. And then we'll be back for G.I. Joe issue 7 as the Skybound Energon Universe continuity continues with the second arc leading out from the story that we've just been talking about. So there is an enormous amount going on. There's G.I. Joe issue number 7 on screen. It's focusing in on Beachhead and Nightforce, so it's a bit of a change of focus to what we've been looking at. We've also got Transformers, and we're sort of continuing to have a little peek at that as to how much G.I. Joe happens to be featuring in that. It seems to be likelihood that there will be more and more. Ultra Magnus and Carly have just been carted away by some military types wearing G.I. Joe logos on their arm. So I'm sure that will be followed up. And yeah, we'll be looking into all of the detail, including the covers. Bit of housekeeping. There is G.I. Joe issue 1, 4th printing coming out. That will be out in June the 4th, 2025. This one has a cover of by Howard Porter, which seems to be echoing that initial scene from G.I. Joe issue 1, where Duke and the crew are jumping out of a cargo plane with their jetpacks. And if you are either new to the Energon universe or you just love having a satisfying hardback collection, the G.I. Joe, codename G.I. Joe Book 1 series collecting Duke and Cobra Commander will also be out very soon. That is being released in June. So a lot of things coming out from Skybound very soon. Tim, do you want to talk about where you can be found when you're not talking to me about G.I. Joe and Transformers and Void Rifles?
YouTube at Atomic Abe. That's where my creative partners and I post video essays on television and film. I have a comic book store, Hub Comics, in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. We, Been Talking Joe, are also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks, as always, to our backers, which include Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane number 2, Infinite Entertainment, and our latest member, Patrick. So all of those cool kids are getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content. Phew. So
I think that is us done, Tim. But before we go, do you need to remind us of something?
Mass Crusaders working over. Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.